And again, it's not this kind of a terror, you know, burning, killing, although that is also happening, and so that you will not accuse me, so that you will not accuse me that I am now selling you some Arab propaganda. The source of what I'm telling you now is mostly Tony Blair and New York Times. So my credentials are the best liberal credentials here. When Tony Blair came as a special envoy of the United States European Union for me back, I saw a short interview with him on British TV where he wasn't yet processed by his PR people. And you can see he came pretty shocked. He said he was shocked by this detailed bureaucracy. Like if you leave Tony Blair, he's my source here, if you are a West Bank farmer, if you are a Palestinian farmer, you can only dig a well to get water 3 feet, 1 meter deep. I don't know what's the idea, that if you dig deeper, it will be a tunnel for terror. If you are an Israeli Jewish farmer, you can dig as long as you want. Or, you know that you need, water has to be distributed. There is not enough water. And to cut a long story short, a Jew gets 7 times more water than a Palestinian there. And then there are numerous nightmarish bureaucratic regulations. I even will not go in them. You know, that's the reality that we forget, which is why it's also interesting how rarely the map of West Bank is reproduced. Not only which territories controls who, but which are the roads, where are control posts, then you discover a nightmare. How should I put it? That's the sad reality. This slow, bureaucratic, suffocating. I think that maybe the moment has even already passed, in the sense of that Palestinians already crossed, as it were, the point of no return. Okay, so now this was the introduction. So now let me go to problem of ideology today. I claim that the crisis, how does all this function? The crisis that we get today, the financial meltdown, I think that it functions very well in the terms developed by Naomi Klein in her shock doctrine. I have some problems with Naomi Klein, but she at least doesn't pretend to be a big theoretician. I claim that nonetheless there is a moment of truth in shock doctrine. This idea that a shock can be used to, as it were, clear the table to impose capitalism. Now, my good friend, French radical leftist, and when I mean radical leftist, he really is. If you think I'm a crazy leftist, listen to him. He wants to rehabilitate Stalin now, so we are talking about the real one. He was mad at me because in my reading of Mao Zedong, I proposed a Naomi Klein reading, okay, I didn't yet know her theory, but basically some reading of even of the great Chinese Cultural Revolution. I claim that, ironically, although it was meant as a radical communist attempt, its real social role was to clear the foundations for capitalism. What was the true effect of Cultural Revolution? You know, they were destroying monuments and so on, like clearing the table, cleansing the table of the tradition, making the people naked, free, and then free in the sense of deprived of traditions. The enemy was tradition then, and in this way, I claim they objectively created conditions for capitalism. So I think that Mao unknowingly was the weapon of capitalism, in the sense of the great cultural revolution did exactly the work of this shock. It is based on this total shock of the population that then it was easy for Deng Xiaoping to introduce these capitalist measures and so on and so on. So this is why I'm not such an optimist in the sense of, oh, with this crisis people will finally see how irrational communism is and so on and so on. No, I claim that crises are always open moments, in the sense that, yes, the traditional ideological discourse is undermined, but more often than leftist radicalization, the result is that you stick even more to the most elementary ideological rationalizations, which ideological reasoning, the foundations of ideology explode in an even more violent way. And this for me is the main lesson. Did you notice, for example, just let me tell you a couple of details, like how I was shocked at how, you know, we talk about crisis. Ecological crisis, we all agree. There are poor people, blah, blah, and we have this endless debate where we basically, what? We agree, it's usually these meetings are hailed as a success when we agree that we have to meet again to talk. Like the last big conference of the great powers for ideology, you remember it was in Bali, and the conclusion was that they should meet in 5 years again and debate, and that was hailed as a... So it goes on, nothing, and so on and so on. But everything can wait. AIDS, global warming, can wait. But when there was this financial crisis, it was a true emergency. You know, we have problems to give everybody, all intelligent doctor who knows about economy will tell you that, for example, the greatest humanitarian catastrophe today, AIDS crisis in the southern part of African continent, can be solved for about 15 to 20 billion dollars. That's a problem. It wasn't a problem to find in 1-2 weeks 700 billions in the United States. This was simply, do you remember how it was really like socialist voting when first the Congress rejected it, then Bush, all of them together, Bush, Obama and so on, basically made the message, listen, this is no longer democratic comedy, now it's the real thing, no joke. And do you remember how in 1 week the American Congress turned from rejecting to 2/3 majority? So this gives us true priorities. This is ideology in its material. People can be dying, we worry about that, and so on and so on. But this is just reality. What really matters is capital. Compare, for example, 700 billions destined to stabilize the banking system, and now there will be another 800, for $22 billion were promised by the rich nations to help the poor nations' agriculture. Only $2.2 billion were delivered. And, okay, now if you are a right-wing liberal, and why not, sometimes they say the bitter truth, you will say, but let's not blame the West. The one to be truly blamed are the Western, are the undeveloped countries through their inefficiency, corruption, and so on and so on. It's not as simple as that. And I will quote you another guy here who, to my surprise, had a moment of truth. And you certainly will not proclaim him a communist. Bill Clinton. He made a very interesting speech. It was reported by Associated Press on October 23rd, 2008. He made a speech at the United Nations gathering marking World Food Day. And listen the title of his speech. We blew it on global economy. What was Bill Clinton's point? It was that today's global food crisis shows how, I quote Clinton, we all blew it, screw it up, ruined it, including me when I was a president. End of quote. How? By treating food crops as commodities instead of a vital right of the world's poor. Clinton put the blame not on individual states or governments, but on the long-term global Western policy imposed by the United States and European Union and enacted for decades by the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund and other institutions. This policy, as we all know, pressured African and Asian countries into dropping government subsidies for fertilizer, improved seed and so on, and thus opening the way for the best land to be used for export crops and for ruining countries' food self-sufficiency. And this is the true catastrophe of the last 2-3 decades. You know, for example, Indonesia is a clear example how through this opening to international markets, the best land is bought for export stuff, usually not even food, but some other land products, and then the new proletarized masses become dependent on imported food and so on and so on. And then when, of course, the prices of food go up, it's hunger. And we are where we are. For example, today in Haiti, for the last half a year, again, I read this in New York Times. You know that, like, hunger is really coming back. Like today in Haiti, I saw a terrible, even on CNN, report on the market of Port-au-Prince. they're again selling, it will sound as a bad joke, it's not mud cakes. Because if they are made by some mud in the suburbs of Port-au-Prince, it has at least some minerals and it fills your stomach. So that's what people are eating and so on and so on. So, so I think that Clinton was right here. But we should add two things. First, how when the developed countries were imposed globalization of agriculture on the third world countries, they took great care to remain self-sufficient themselves at the level of food. We know all these paradoxes. That was the hypocrisy, I claim, of the US, that they demanded of third world countries to open themselves in market and so on, but they what? They were very careful to remain self-sufficient. And then you have tragedies